Hi, folks. Welcome, and thank you so much for coming to talk to us today about strategic budgeting. My coworker Jeff Goldstein and I are going to be talking to you today about Unibudget and our new offering, our new product offering, which is our strategic budgeting module. So we've got an agenda here. We're going to be going over a few different topics. I hope that today you're going to come away with some fresh ideas about the concept of strategic planning and how it can overlap with budgeting. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end, so please do dump your questions into the chat and we can take them in order when we get to that section. All right, first off, a little bit of a background on strategic planning and how here at Questica, or Euna that is, we approach strategic planning. So we work with a lot of municipalities, other public sector organizations as well, but a lot of municipalities, a lot of cities, a lot of regions, and strategic budgeting is wildly popular. A statistic that comes up a lot when you talk about strategic budgeting is this lack of public trust in government. But actually, if you look at these numbers, they tend to skew very heavily toward the federal, the provincial, or the state level of governments. Municipalities are among the most trusted governments, although still there is a downward trend in public trust in governments, especially over the last couple of decades. And one of the ways that we can address this is by better alignment with our communities, better transparency and communication with our communities. And a great way to do this is, of course, developing and publishing a strategic plan. It is a longer term view that allows you to move past the shorter term concerns like your your operating budget, your approved operating budget and its forecast years, or the election cycles of your executive leadership who have to worry about these sort of short-term concerns, including how they might be getting votes. This is a chance for the administration and the executive to get together and take a longer view and talk about the philosophy of your organization and your area, where you really want to take things in the long term. And personally, to me as a citizen, that means a lot. I really appreciate hearing this kind of stuff from my local elected government and hearing about the big plans, where we really want to go as a community. It makes me feel like I'm more of a community member, and it makes me feel like we're going somewhere and not just wasting time over at City Hall. I'm actually just only a block away from City of Burlington City Hall here, and I do drop by there now and then to see what's happening. So what generally happens with these plans, I'll back up for a minute, is that a consultant is often engaged. The executive and hopefully the administration get involved along with other stakeholders, department heads, citizen engagement, and we go through this whole process. We identify the organization's mission, vision, and values, the high-level philosophical principles that are going to underpin the strategic plan. There's often an offsite involved. A little bit of soul searching happens, and what we come away with at the end of it is this document that describes the current state of our strategic plan, and then we commit to an ongoing cycle of revision where we might be planning out 40 years with our strategic plan, much longer than any budget or shorter term plan, even within capital a lot of the time. But we need to revisit it, so maybe on a 5-year cadence or something, we're going to do an exercise to go back to that plan, see how we're tracking, make changes to adjust for the changing times and changing conditions. At the end of this process, what often happens is that often via the consultant, the municipality or the organization will engage the services of a graphic designer. And the graphic designer will take this document and add all the little curlicues, some clip art. They're going to put in all these pretty page layouts. And then you're going to purchase the best cardstock with the glossiest finish that is available. And we're going to print this thing out. It's going to be available at City Hall to anybody who wants to pick it up. And as a sort of also ran, there will be a PDF available on the city website. You're going to have your infographics that the graphic designer is going to lay out on these different pages laid out for print. And this is a puzzle to me, that the end of this important process culminates in the creation of this pretty antiquated style of document The World Wide Web has been around for 30 years, and it is a really great publishing medium. It is also the primary medium of our times through which information gets sent out. If you try to bring up a page like this from the Los Angeles Strategic Plan on your iPhone, which is what a lot of citizens are going to do, you're not going to be able to read it. You're going to have to pinch and zoom and scroll around to see this information. And if you use assistive technologies to read this book, your screen reader is going to have a tough time picking all this stuff out. This is not accessibility friendly. Or if you want your PDF to be accessible, you're going to have to go through an expensive remediation process. Probably a lot of you are familiar with this, to get that PDF certified. Even then, we have a lot of experience with this here at Questica. We know that even accessibility certified remediated PDFs are not a great reading experience for citizens, not the way that they can be on the web. So since people are using the web, and since people have the entire internet in their pocket, and why are we still creating these slightly outdated types of documents? I mean, they look good. They make us feel like we've accomplished something. You can hold it in your hands. It looks really good, but we want to try and move past this. I'm going to come back to this issue of media a little bit later. We've got beautiful books, and really, most cities now and other municipalities, you go to the sites, they're going to have, it's a pretty familiar template. Here's our capital city of Canada, Ottawa, with their strategic plan. Some nice geometry here. This walking path looks like actually it needs some resurfacing, but otherwise pretty good. All the way down to a smaller municipality like one of my favorite places, the village of Pugwash, Nova Scotia, out in Eastern Canada. Used to drive past here on my way to university when I was younger, and it's a beautiful little spot. Pugwash has got a strategic plan, and it's actually really thoughtfully written, for their size and for what they want to do. It's a great document. They did a good job on it, in my opinion. They saved some tax dollars, it looks like, did not necessarily hire a graphic designer, and instead they just went with Comic Sans and a nice picture of the village. And why not? Really spending all these tax dollars on a graphic designer to spice everything up. How much value are you delivering to your constituents for that money? So I say kudos to Pugwash. They should probably change their font next time, but otherwise they did a great job. So we come up with this big strategic plan, this long view that spells out our philosophy. And then hopefully, if it's done properly, that strategic plan is broken down into increasingly granular levels. So that we have this big overarching strategic plan, and that might be broken down into what are sometimes called strategic pillars. The words are always a little different from place to place, but you might break down your plan into the pillars. And one of the pillars might be, we're a green city, for example, or our region has the best environmental quality. And then that might be broken down into certain programs, like improve air quality. And then below the program level, we've got actions, strategic actions. These are the things we're really going to do. And they roll all the way up to our top level vision. But down at the bottom, these are what we call SMART goals. I'm sure everybody knows about SMART goals. They're things that we understand how to do, that we can measure, and that are reasonable and that we can accomplish. So at the bottom of that, improve air quality, you might have an action called plant 100,000 trees within the city limits by 2030 or something like that. This is something we can wrap our heads around, something we can go and execute. And this is where performance measurement or performance management, depending on which GFOA book you've read, starts to come into it. We need to measure these actions. We need to track our progress, of course. It's sort of like a big project management exercise. But we want to measure the inputs and outputs. We want to know the efficiencies of these programs and ultimately the outcomes. So everything from measurements of air quality to number of trees planted and everything in between. And what we find is often missing is the connection between the most important measure of all, the performance measure of budget and actual. From the world of performance measurement, you can think of a budget as a type of measure, where the budget, the target, the actual spend is the measurement. But often we see this is not brought in a structured and rigorous way. So I speak to a lot of different folks at different municipalities and other public sector orgs, and it's very familiar to me to talk to folks who've had great accomplishments, who have excellent strategic plans. And when we get down to this level of detail with their plans, say, okay, so how do we do it? How do you folks connect your detailed strategic plan actions into your budget? Or is the connection point something that is structured and rigorous and something that's going to give you good measurements? And oftentimes I get this answer, well, we haven't really figured that part out yet, or it's a little fuzzy. That's one of the things we want to do next, but we haven't quite figured out how they're all going to snap together yet. So here at Questica, this is something that we've helped customers with a number of times. You know, we have a consulting team that works with change management and larger projects like that with public sector organizations. And our consulting team, led by our head consultant, Doug Fletcher, have actually worked through enough of these projects with individual customers that we have come up with a system, an opinionated system. It's not one size fits all, but it's not a blank slate either for how you can actually get this connection made. Because really, if you think of budget versus actual as just another measurement, it's a key measurement when it comes to your strategic plan. If we're planting 100,000 trees, how much is it going to cost? How much have we spent so far? Are we over budget? How much is it going to cost us to finish? And then in combination with the rest of those measures, what were we planning to do? Did it work? Did we get the outcomes that we want? Did we get value for our money? These are all the key important questions that really make for a holistic and comprehensive plan and put you in a position when that next review comes along, to actually adjust and understand where you are on the path. So we feel that connecting your strategic plan into your budget, what we call strategic budgeting, is a key accomplishment for anybody who's embarking on a strategic planning exercise. And that's really what our new strategic budgeting module is all about. So we'll take a quick breather here. Let's do a poll. We would love to hear where everyone is at with their own strategic plans. Does your organization have one? You're thinking about doing it? No plans to do anything like that. Well, you probably wouldn't be here today if that were the case. And if you have any notes about this, please do drop them into the chat too. All right, so we've got a good number of customers here. I should say a good number of folks who have a strategic plan and are integrating it in one way or another into your budgeting process. Well, that's great. Can't wait to hear more about it. Now, for our next section, pardon me, I must close this poll to continue. Here we are. All right, now I'm going to pass things over to Jeff, and we're going to talk a bit more about our system for making that connection between plan and budget.
Great, thank you, James. The next slide for me. So welcome everybody. I'm going to be taking us through the next section, also through a little bit of a demo of our product. So excited to show you that. So as James was saying, really what we're trying to do is make the connection between the outputs of the strategic plan and into the budget. And it's really important because the budget is really kind of where we're saying, okay, we're going to fund these priorities and make them a priority, and we're going to put dollars to that, right? So in going through this process, you're effectively kind of putting your money where your mouth is, right, in terms of these things, right? So we have these specific initiatives, and we're going to have specific dollars or specific FTEs even to each of these initiatives. And so the other part of that is increasing accountability and transparency, right? So with all these things, being able to show really anybody what dollars are associated with specific initiatives, what FTEs and things like that. And then, as James was alluding to as well, is really the ability to track these things. As we start going through the year and we're saying, okay, we had this many budget dollars associated with a specific initiative, how are we doing against that plan? Are we funding things at the level we thought we were? Are we making progress on our initiatives and our goals? And we should be able to track all of these things within software, and we'll show you some of that here today as well. Next slide. So what we're going to do once we get into the software, really the outputs of your strategic plan have multiple layers to them. As James alluded to them as well, your top layer, when I show you this, is going to be kind of more like a pillar a higher level. And then you would go down, say, in this example, to have a goal. And so we want to reduce homelessness. And underneath each of those goals, you might have a strategy, and each strategy then has either what we're calling an action or initiative, right? So as James said, the wording really doesn't matter. The key here is that you're usually out of that plan going to have this kind of layered approach. But the budget layer, where you can actually put dollars, is usually at that lowest level to that initiative level. And you can always roll up, right? So if you're budgeting at these initiatives level, which in this diagram here, that purple level is where we're going to start putting dollars towards those initiatives. And we can always roll up, right? So we can always roll up and say, okay, how does that now meet our goal of homeless prevention? And then ultimately up to the first pillar level as well when we do that. So you're going to have a multiple layered approach, and this is the level we're going to budget at. And then we can always roll up or down it and really track this at any of these levels. Next slide. So here's an example of the city of Arvada, just to kind of, give you another kind of visual of this. So on the left-hand side is the goal. And so we have a certain goal to complete things by a certain time. And then you see the initiatives level here. So this is one of our clients, people we've worked with in the past. These are, just an example of this if you're just looking to say in a report when you're doing that. So all of those initiatives are going to be the level that we budget at, and we might have a certain goal to complete them by a certain date. Now, this is where the performance measure part of this, or tracking, or even if you want to call it statistical measures, comes in. Each of these initiatives is going to have a, let's just call them KPI or key performance indicator, or multiple indicators that tell us whether we're on track, right? So the key on those is if you're looking at those indicators, you should be able to look at them, look how we're doing against our actuals compared to this budgeted plan. And we should be able to tell if we are, on track to meet those goals in terms of time, but also dollars, and also really the outcomes, right? Did we accomplish our goal? So these are all the things you can be able to do by connecting that strategic plan down to a budget level. Next slide. So I think we have another poll here. So we'll pause here and get your input on these. So this is, are you linking your strategic planning process to your budget process currently? So a similar theme as before. All right, so almost 10% say yes. The others have said that they we'd like to link these, but currently are not doing that. Okay, well that's good news, because we're going to show you how to do that as well on our demo here next. I think next slide. All right, yeah. So I think we're at the demo section. So you can go ahead and change me over to the presenter, James. Or there we go. Perfect. And can I confirm, James, do you see my screen now?
Looks good, Jeff.
All right, thank you. All right, so let me just move some of this stuff out of the way. Perfect. All right, so what you're seeing is our Euna budget powered by Questica. And this is our strategic budgeting platform of what we've built. So what I'm going to first show you is a example of a 3-leveled structure that came out of a strategic plan. And we generically just leave this, calling this plan level 1, 2, and 3. You could rename those things in our software, right? So if this was pillars, goals, objectives, you can name that. We're also not tied into having 3 layers, right? If you needed that 4 layers, we can do that. If you only want to use 2, you want to budget at level 2 instead of level 3. You have lots of flexibility within our software to make those types of configurations. So this is when you would work with us during implementation to set that up. So where did these things come from? So these are what I would call our pillars, or level 1. So this is our highest level. So we have certain pillars of civic excellence, community, and economy. These are really kind of grouping that next layer down into these groupings. And again, you could always roll up to this level and report at that. So if we take a step forward and go to that next level, this is our plan level 2 here as this loads. So under each of these plan level 1s, these are civic excellence, economy, community, you might have multiple now level 2s, right? So under civic excellence, we have environmental health, high performing government, right? So this is that next level down. And again, this is part of your strategic plan. So if you have a strategic plan, something similar to this, you would have this, right? So that higher level 1 rolling into these level 2s. And underneath each of these level 2s now, if I go down to that third level in this example, you're going to have specific now initiatives that are going to be tied to those plan level 2s and then back to the 1s, right? So you can see all those different things for that. And so this would be completely up to you. And again, these are things that are coming from your strategic plan, right? So as part of environment health, we want to reduce waste and things like that. So I'm going to pick on one. So just to show you what you could do here once you have this set up is if I go into one of these, you'd be able to track at any of these levels how much budget dollars are associated with, what FTEs are associated with this particular initiative, also what statistics are available. So what you're seeing here at this level is what budget dollars now for any number of years are associated with this particular initiative. And as people build their budgets, they'd be tagging things to these specific initiatives, and this list would build out more completely as well. So you would see this at the budget line level, statistical level, and also at the FTE level. To take this a step further, this is right here where we're looking at kind of like an evaluate and maintain utility infrastructure. How does this look when somebody goes into, to complete their operating budget as an example? So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and we'll go into a budget here for our information systems department, and we'll open that up. So within each budget, as somebody comes into the system, they go to do their budgeting for the year. So doing our budgeting for 2025, you can budget forward as many years as you like. So this could be a single year budget or multiple years. Most of our clients budget anywhere from 1 to 5 years on their operating budget. What you see here is that plan level 1, 2, 3 structure here as well. And at that level 3 level, for example, you'd be able to select which one of the initiatives you want to budget for. You'd also be able to break this line out or any line out into as much granularity as you need, right? So maybe I had $10,000 of overtime, but 50% of that goes to our improved social well-being, and another 50% goes to another initiative. You'd be able to split that out as granular as you'd like. What we see here is the budget dollars associated with each of these initiatives for each of the different years, and you can see this just kind of how you're probably budgeting before at a cost center account. You have that structure as well, so you could report on that structure, or you could report on any of these other structures. To just kind of show you how this rolls up within any of these grouping items here, I can group by those. So if I want to summarize for each of my different initiative, the budget dollars, I can do that here on screen as well with a click of a button and kind of summarize here in my budget how much budget dollars are being spent for each of those different initiatives. But the user would come in and tag those things, right? I'm going to ungroup that, and they would start tagging to those initiatives. Same thing with positions, right? As we go to complete our budget, our highest expense item is always going to be our labor, but we can also now tag specific positions here with, specific initiatives as well. And again, you could split these out, right? So an FTE could be split in multiple different ways in our system. They could also be split across multiple plan level 3s or initiatives in this case. So you can be very specific on those, and you'd be able to report at this level. So you, at the end of this, I'll show you, could get a report and say, here's how many FTEs are going towards our specific initiative, or even rolled up at any of those levels, plan level 1, 2, or 3. The last thing is statistics, right? So the ability now to say, okay, what are going to be the important statistics now to track and see if we're on schedule? So as you budget for FTEs, the system automatically calculates man hours for that. Also, here are those KPIs as we talked about. So for these particular initiatives, we're going to track incidents or ones that are closed or percentages. You'll be able to develop whatever KPI or tracking mechanism that you want for each of these initiatives. And you'll be able to see how much is budgeted in each cost center, as an example, as you budget to track that. So those are the 3 pieces you would get as specific budget dollars, specific FTEs, and then also specific statistics that we would use for that tracking as well. So how does this all come together? This is kind of more of an example of a cost center, doing their budget. Well, as you open up your budget for the year, you're going to have multiple people working in the system of building their budgets in this way. How does this all roll up? And the best way to look at that is we have reports that will roll this up, and I have a couple of those reports here in the dashboard. So in this case, as this loads, we'd be able to look at our budget dollars across any of those plan levels. I could do some similar things as I showed you here on screen when we were budgeting, and then I can group by any of these levels so I can see my plan level 3s and how much budget dollars are associated for each of those projects. Same things in terms of measures. This one goes a little wide, but I'll do the same thing here. I could track all the different statistical measures now and their values that go against that particular initiative. We could track the actuals as they come in versus the budget, and this could again be our indicator. We could build an entire dashboard of indicators and how we're doing against the actuals in the plan. And then you could also just kind of keep to the bottom here our FTEs, right? So here, if I want to look at our plan level 3 FTEs, I can see which particular initiatives have specific FTEs assigned to them and how much. So I can get very granular in this reporting, and overall right now we have about 27 FTEs assigned to specific initiatives. So this is just demo data, but you could, this would change as people are entering data or going through this allocation method of tagging dollars, statistics, FTEs to a particular initiative. Now, some of the things before I turn it back over to James that have come up just in discussions with clients is, even theory on, well, does every item need to be tagged? Not necessarily, right? You could have FTEs that aren't tagged. You could have budget dollars that don't necessarily, or just dollars that we're budgeting for, but don't necessarily go to something that we want to allocate budget dollars to a specific initiative. The other thing is, we're showing here an example of tagging this down to the lowest level and tagging it to every cost center account. You might have instances, the way that you design it is that entire cost centers could be allocated towards a specific initiative also, without having to tag each line item. So that's what we're saying, through the configuration or as you want to go through a process like this, we can work with you during implementation to be able to design this in a way that works for your organization, where somebody else might say, I want it to be at that granular level, and you might say, I want it more rolled up. So we're not really, we can work with any configuration that you'd like. This is the way that our kind of generic configuration would come out as a starting point for any implementation or kind of trying to link that strategic planning to budgeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to James. So what James is going to go through then is, how do I take all these dollars now and all this work we're doing in the budget and create a strategic planning document? And James will take us through that process. Thanks, James. You back as the presenter, there you go.
Jeff, can you see my open book screen?
I can.
Great, thanks. So let's see here. So we've just dropped out of Questica Budget, and now we're into Questica Open Book. So this is our financial transparency and reporting platform that can be used to publish information to the public. Now, just in the last year, we've made a lot of advancements on this platform. We've gone from being able to deliver individual data visualizations to being able to do more composed article style presentations that include mixes of rich media and text, images, video, as well as interactive data visualizations. And then onwards to the ability to create books. So our first use case for this tool was creating annual budget books for public sector organizations. But this tool is just as good at creating other types of long-form financial reports. And so here we've got an example of using it to build our strategic plan document. So this is an example of how we would create something that is going to be published on the web. It is not a glossy printed document with fancy curlicues and clip art. Well, I mean, hey, here's a clip art of some people sitting in a boardroom. It doesn't get any more clip art than that. But the idea that this is a document that lives on the web, that means it is completely accessible. We meet the highest levels of WCAG accessibility. In fact, it's very hard to make a document in this system that breaks accessibility, but we have an integrated scanner. You can see this page here has a failure, for example, so that you always know when you publish a document here, you are meeting the top level. So no remediation, no findings on your PDFs. That is a thing of the past with this tool. And for the citizen who likes to bring up this information on their phone, let's see here. is my, oh man, here we go. I'll show a preview here of our message from the mayor. We're going to switch it into mobile view. And you can see that these layouts will adapt to a skinnier screen so that if you're looking at this thing on a phone, it's going to come out at just the right width. It's not going to look all squished. You're not going to be pinching and zooming and scrolling around. So this is a document that is native to the web, and it's made for the modern web. Of course, above and beyond the idea of just not being on paper anymore and being accessible to everyone, including people with assistive devices and people with small devices. This can also incorporate multimedia. That means we can have interactivity, we can have video, we can have all the good stuff that makes the modern web what it is, and no reason not to include this stuff. A lot of our city customers actually produce at some expense engaging videos that explain their strategic plan and how it was developed and what's in it. Why wouldn't that be in your strategic plan publication? Now you could just embed it at the top of your introduction page. So here we have all the same sorts of information that you would find inside of the strategic plan printed document, except now it's laid out in electronic format. So I'm in the builder right now, not the published version, mind you. And when we get down to the good stuff, the actual data, we've got information about these strategic goals, those individual low-level strategic actions that we were talking about. So what we have built into the tool here is the ability to use automation. So I can make a page template for something like my strategic actions, where I'm actually pulling this data straight out of Questica Budget. So, there is the opportunity here to author information directly in the tool. You can see I've got some paragraphs of text here. This should be a very familiar WYSIWYG interface, pretty similar to authoring a website in Squarespace or something like that. But in addition to just authoring new content right here in OpenBook, we can also integrate back to Questica Budget. And in fact, these individual pages are being pulled from those strategic plans back in Questica Budget. And so we can do things like pulling in the numbers. So in this case, we have grabbed information about the budget. So for this particular 7.8 evaluate and maintain town infrastructure goal, we've grabbed the data from Questica. We've also spent some time to put some more engaging content in here. And we dropped in a nice looking picture. We've added some more engaging text. And now we've pulled in the data. So this is coming, again, straight out of Questica Budget. If I change the budget at any time, I'm going to have a push button update for my book. It brings all the numbers back in sync with what's in the budget system. So it's those dreaded updates are often the problem for these kinds of publications, especially for budget books. Strategic plans, we don't see the budget so much getting published in these documents. And I really think that is something that could change. This is an example of the strategic plan book that is showing you exactly what we're going to spend on evaluating and maintaining town infrastructure. And instead of a table that is 10 feet tall and just lists out a whole bunch of accounts and numbers, we're able to use interactive data visualization instead to present the same information in a much more compact experience. So inside of this little rectangle, we've got a bar chart here, but I can click on the bar to drill in and find more and more levels of detail and navigate around this. So instead of just a giant wall of information, we have an interactive experience. And again, with our templating technology, this could be getting spat out by the system and auto-generated for every one of the strategic goals you define back in Questica Budget, so that the automation is saving you a ton of time in creating this content. Here we have a chart where we're pulling some of that statistical information. So we had a stat account in there called the monthly number of SSI incidents, and we're showing that in a chart. And then down here, we have more of a measure-based targets and performance, right? So we're listing some of our performance measures that are associated with this action, with the target and the actual. We're showing the variance. We've got a little color coding, showing when you're going over and under. So this is our solution for publishing a strategic plan, including your budget information, and creating an engaging experience for your citizens and your stakeholders that joins the modern web and offers all the benefits of that medium. All right, Jeff?
Yep.
I will pass it back to you. Oh, no, hang on.
Bring up the slide.
This bit, wasn't I?
Thanks.
No
So as
problem.
James is bringing that up, one question, James, can I print that document still though? Right.
Right. Yes, great question. So our budget books and strategic budgeting books, as well as all the long form financial publications that we build with OpenBook, they can be printed to a PDF. So if you have maybe certain constituents or executives who really want to have this thing on paper, you can still hit the print button and get that PDF out. The PDF is no longer the central or the canonical publication. It is the also ran to the first class web experience.
Thanks. All right, so final slide, just wanted to bring us in for a landing and really summarize what we've talked about here today. So we have 6 steps really on how to kind of get from your current existing budget process to what we're calling a strategic budgeting process. And the first step really is reviewing your existing practices and what you're doing. If you're not currently connecting your strategy process, strategic planning to your budget, most of our clients begin with, say, taking last year's budget as a starting point. Now, that might be common or an easy way to get started, but you're also, in doing that, potentially rewarding people to spend dollars just to keep that in their budget, right? So I've always had this in my budget. If I don't spend it, it's going to be taken away. So I'm going to spend the dollars. As opposed to kind of more going to a strategic planning process and budgeting process. In doing that, dollars will move from place to place because we're going to now put the dollars towards our strategic initiatives. So first, review those practices. The other part of this too is in a lot of places, the strategic planning process and budgeting processes might be handled by 2 different offices. So it's connecting those 2 offices so that they're working in sync with each other as part of an overall financial management process is part of that as well. So they're working in sync and together. The second part is really engaging with stakeholders, right? So how do we know what projects to fund, what initiatives we should have, things like that. Part of that is going to come from internally and the things that management has identified, but where does that come from really on, hopefully part of that is speaking with policymakers, department heads, and community to gather that information, right? So what do the people who live in our city, as an example, feel is our most important priorities, and what would they like to see funded? So it's engaging with those stakeholders. Once you do that is really then building a strategic planning document. And as James went over, right, this is really about setting that, if you're thinking about building a house, really kind of building the walls, right? So these are kind of these overarching themes of what we're trying to do across our city, as an example, for an extended period of time, right? So as James showed the example, one of them was out to 2040. Some of these could be 5-year focused, 10-year focused, and that plan could be updated throughout that particular time horizon as well. And as what James showed in the budget book studio process of building that document, one of the things our software will do is make it much easier to update that, right? So as you go from year to year and you have next year's budget, those budget allocations towards initiatives are going to change over time. So with a push of a button, you can update those numbers once you have that structure of your plan created. So here, creating a plan with those goals and objectives and initiatives so that we could go into in step 4 here, a budgeting and funding process with those particular community outcomes in mind, right? So it's now developing a budget, as we showed you, at the strategic goal and initiative level and connecting them to KPIs that we could track and see how we're doing. And then once we do that, we can use this type of data for analysis, forecasting. We can look at what predict, we have in Questica budget, the ability to forecast multiple years. So you'd be able to go out and you create a multi-year forecast for specific budget dollars. You'd be able to move budget dollars around between specific initiatives and really be able to start taking all of this data that you're collecting as part of a budgeting process, strategic planning process, and turning that data into information and information that tells a story. And that's really what we're trying to do as creating a strategic planner, creating these interactive documents, as you saw on the OpenBook platform and our Budget Book Studio, part of our software. And then finally, in step 6 is really finding the right partner, technology partner, to help you through this journey. And part of this is software, right? So the ability to connect multiple departments to be able to be working on a strategic planning document together or a budgeting process together. And the ability to do that, at different times, right? You could, everything's on the web now, right? We could work on this at home. We can work on this together in different offices and be able to collaborate and create, great strategic planning documents, budgets, budget books, things like that. So really partnering with the right technology partner. As James mentioned, we also have a ton of experience in terms of consulting. So if in this journey, you're like, wow, I want to do this, but I don't know where to start, we can certainly help with that. If you do not have a strategic plan right now, we won't necessarily take your organization through a strategic planning process, but we do have experience with different organizations of kind of what they did in this 3-level structure and can make suggestions and a place to start and get you started in doing it. And maybe your first strategic plan is built in our budget book studio. So it's really connecting the dots and selecting the right technology partner in order to make your lives easier, make your process more efficient, and ultimately get you back to doing your main jobs, which are, the analysis part, and also setting this up in the best way to communicate both internally and externally. And so if you like what you've seen today, we hope that you would contact us to talk about our strategic budgeting as part of our unit budget platform as well. So with that, I will pause and open up to questions.
Thank you, James and Jeff, for taking us through this wonderful presentation. For those on the line, a little bit startled by my voice, I'm Maria. I also work at Euna Solutions. I've just been behind the scenes and I will be helping out with the question period. So if you have any questions about anything you heard in the presentation, please pop them into the questions box or the chat box. So far, we just had one around making this presentation available. So everybody on the line will receive a recording of this presentation. We'll also make the slides available. So please keep an eye out on your inboxes. We will be sending those via email. And let's just give people maybe a few more minutes to give them an opportunity to type in any questions they might have. So far, it seems that you both did such a wonderful job of covering the material and showing off all of the different features available in Questica Budget that don't have a whole lot of questions coming in aside from just the availability of the recording.
Jeff, just last year, my city of Burlington here decided to, on their strategic pillar of environmental sustainability and transportation, to open up some bike lanes in the city. We're pretty suburban. We're a bit of a commuter town. A lot of people drive into Toronto and a lot of 2-car garages in the city. So it was considered a pretty radical move for us to put a bike lane in both directions on New Street, which is one of our east-west arteries, giving up a lane in the process, going down from 4 to 3 as a pilot project. And oh man, it was probably the biggest news story in Burlington for the year. Everybody had something to say about the increased congestion on New Street and how nobody's using these bike lanes and what are we doing. So they definitely got a lot of citizen feedback from that. I feel like it was a really unfair exercise personally, because they just put it in the worst possible place where it was going to annoy everybody who was out driving. And it wasn't necessarily connecting any major areas that people would be cycling between. So it was sort of doomed to not get used. But anyway, that was addressed in their next revamp. And I was just reading up on this. We have a bunch more strategically considered bike lanes that are going to be going in the next year, including one they just finished building. So it was an interesting example of taking a strategic action and then evaluating, taking some feedback, maybe redoing it a little bit.
Yeah, or possibly not getting that feedback up front or understanding the feedback to build the bike lane,
Yeah,
right? Is also where that problem could have fallen down too.
Still, I don't know, you just both did such an amazing job covering the material. Nobody seems to have any questions, or people might just be a little bit shy. That's okay. One thing is, if you think of a question after the presentation and you don't get a chance to kind of submit it here, please feel free to reach out to us, and then we're happy to chat as well. You can simply hit, reply to the email with the recording that we sent. And then we'll be more than happy to answer those questions and kind of get in touch with you. But I think we can probably wrap it up here if you are both comfortable with that.
Sounds good to me.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you, James and Jeff, for taking the time to take us over this information. And thank you to everybody on the line for making the time in your very busy days to attend and learn a little bit about the strategic plan and your budget. And yeah, keep an eye out on your inbox for the recording of this presentation. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.